What's up YouTube, Dal here from Zephyr, and today I'm bringing you another back to basics tutorial video, and today we are going to be looking at deck building. Now I've broken the process of deck building down to 5 very easy steps that you can take whether you are coming back to the game or whether you are just new to the game in general. So with all of that out of the way, please smash that like button, hit that notification bell and subscribe to find out more content on the channel, and stay tuned for all future updates as well. So we're going to dive headfirst into the video and we're going to go over the 5 stages of being able to deck build. Now obviously you want to be building everything up. Idea is that you're going to be building up your deck to take it from testing at home, testing with friends, to playing at a local environment or higher. So where do you start? Well, you start with the deck basics first. You need to know how you build a deck. Each deck can be comprised of 40 to 60 cards with a 15 card extra deck and a 15 card side deck. You can only play 3 copies per individual card unless it is stated on the ban list that it is either banned, where you can play none of that card, semi-limited, where you can play 2 of that card, or limited, where you can only play 1 copy of that card. Check out the most recent Yugioh ban list in order to find out exactly if your card is on there. If the card does not appear on there, then you can take it with good authority that it is legal to play at 3. So why do deck ranges from 40 to 60? Well, quite simply, the most common decks will be ranged at 40 cards, purely because this gives you the most consistency on a mathematical scale of being able to see your cards as consistently as you possibly want. 60 card decks are a little bit different. These are decks that just have huge amounts of consistency, that are just splashed in loads of different consistable engines that will just constantly go through each other, and you want to minimize your chance of drawing 5 cards and going, yeah, can't do nothing with that, pass, and then losing the duel. So that's why you stick with 40 cards. A 15 card extra deck is not absolutely mandatory. You don't have to have one. There are some decks that actually benefit without playing an extra deck, stuff like True Dracos and of course Monarchs. There are decks as well that don't want to be using their extra deck, or want their extra deck gone, so they will utilize cards that banish them without even needing to worry about what they are. You've also got stuff like Flunderies and Numelias. For the side deck, that is probably the second most important element in my opinion, as opposed to your main deck and your extra deck. That kind of comes with 15 side deck cards that you are able to interchange with your main deck games 2 and games 3, but you need to make sure you reset your deck to be in the original 40 cards at the end of every little duel. Now what I mean by that is when you go to your local environment, the chances are you'll play anywhere from 3 rounds to 5 rounds of Swiss and maybe a top cut. These are usually best 2 out of 3 in the TCG area. What this means is with your 15 card side deck, you can't put those 15 cards in, take 15 cards out and play with them in game 1, and then you can't do the same for games 2 and 3, duel 2 and 3. You have to make sure that game 2, you put in cards that will be more effective against that specific matchup that you are facing, and you take out cards that are going to be less effective. And then at the end of the duel, you reset your deck so that it starts off with the original 40 cards. That is very, very important to always remember to count your extra deck, to count your side deck, make sure you've got all 15 cards in there, and make sure all 15 cards are the original 15 cards that started in there, especially if you have written out a deck list at your higher events, because you do not want to be getting game losses or anything else, but that's something you'll need to focus on later on in the trial. So moving on to stage number 2. Now the stage number 2 that I've kind of broken it down, after you've understood the basics of, okay, I can play 3 of this card, I can play 2 of this card, I want to build a 40 card deck or a 60 card deck, you then need to know what your playstyle is. What type of deck appeals to you? What I mean by that is there are a couple of different styles of decks, but mainly it's split down the middle between control decks, which is set back row, interact with your opponent more during their turn and kind of control the game state, slowing it down, or combo decks, where you pretty much go, this card leads into this card, leads into that card, goes into A, B, C, D, E, F, G, build up an entire board, pass it to your opponent, and then they need to try and break it. Or if you're going second, you're building up an incredible board, and as combo states, you're basically going from one part to the second part to the third part, and so on. Whereas control is a lot more about, okay, cool, my turn's going to be a lot quicker, I'm just going to set cards, pass, and my form of interaction or combo is going to happen during your turn, because I need to make sure that I interact with you with the correct opponent at the correct time to stop you or slow you down. There are plenty of decks out there, more recent and of course old decks, that are expensive and cheap that fit in both of these categories. So what you really need to do, and what I advise doing, is testing out or looking at certain playstyles and going, okay, do I want to be able to sit back a little bit more, set a couple of cards, pass over, or do I have a really good memory and I can learn combos very quickly and know exactly what I need to do? In my opinion, combo is a little bit more complicated because there are times when your opponent will interact with you and you need to know what do I do if they interact with me, how do I adapt my play, and you need to work it on the fly. Whereas control decks are quite simple of, okay, flip this card, I've stopped your play, move on to your next play. I flip this card, I've stopped that play, move on to your next play. And you keep going and going and going and going. So once you've figured out your playstyle, whether you want to be combo or of course whether you want to be control, start looking at your budget. Figure out what your budget is going to be first and foremost. Do you want it to be a 50 card budget? I don't want to spend anything more than that. Or are you willing to go all in, put as much money in as completely possible? You want to compete and get there as fast as possible. Now, I do highly go against that. I do not feel, there are a lot of people out there that will go, okay, cool, the number one deck right now is £500, give or take, maybe a little bit less, like £400, £300, you name it. I'm going to spend £300 on that deck. I'm going to go and be the best because I've got this one deck and I've net decked this exact list from someone that won an event over in America or somewhere in Europe. Do not agree with that, do not do that. If you're going to net deck anything specifically, you do it as a tester. What you do is you take that deck list, you know that deck list has been successful, you test it around, you go, right, okay, this card doesn't work for me, this doesn't match my playstyle, this doesn't match my local environment, and adapt it from that point on. But that's something that will come in later on down on the further steps. So once you've figured out the basics, once you've got what type of playstyle you want to be going for and you've got your budget, the next stage before you put any money into the game is going to be testing. Now, there are plenty of online simulators, Yugioh Pro, Duelbook, you name it, even Master Duel, technically in a sense, just to get your head around the basics. But this will allow you to digitally build a deck, any deck you want with any cards imaginable, and test it out. Now, I do highly advise that when you are working around your budget, you are trying to build a deck that is within your budget restraints. If you're like, right, I've got a £50 budget, but the deck I'm digitally building is worth £200 in real life, you're not really playing on a realistic level. If you see a deck that you really, really love and it's £150, you're like, I must play this deck, then the next thing that circles back to your budget is look at alternatives. Not every card in the game will have alternative. That's why some cards are a lot more expensive than others, but you will be able to find a common ground in between the two. For example, Forbidden Drop is probably about a £15 card, whereas Darkworld or No More is about a £1 card, £2 card, depending on if you're going to be picking up structure decks or not. So you've got a close alternative, that a card you can activate that your opponent cannot respond to. Obviously, one is a quick play, one is a normal one. We'll take you in depth about the different styles of spells, traps, and quick plays, monster effects, all of that in a different video. But the idea is you want to look at cheaper alternatives in order to build your deck as best as possible. Another reason for testing as well, and also keeping an eye going back to the basics of looking at the ban list, is you want to make sure you're not buying the number one deck, spending £150, and then a ban list drops a week later that completely destroys that deck, because then you're out of money, you're going to be disjected, and you're not going to want to go, right, okay, well, I've just put £150 in, the value of my deck's now crashed to like £50, the deck's not playable, it's not competitive anymore, where do I go from here? So my personal advice when you're testing or building or going back over all of this is to make sure you're looking at decks that can compete but are not always in the public eye. Decks like Tractrix and Darkworld are a great example for this because not only are they slightly competitive at the right environment as well, they also go under the radar, so it's very rare that anything on their list should get hit on a ban list. And on top of that, they've also had recent structure decks, meaning that you can pick these up relatively cheaply and still be able to play and compete at your local environment. So if you are not a digital tester like me and you prefer to physically test, you always have the option of making your own cards. Now, these cards are not legal to be played at tournaments, so do not even try that. The idea of printing off proxies is so that you can physically test, get used to muscle memory and the physical actions of shuffling, drawing, comboing, and moving around. Personally, I find that a lot better as a learning experience when I am testing decks out. I would much rather do a test stand on myself, play around with it, see what my boards I can build, how it can play around with it, and then take it to a local environment, and that's when you're going to start getting the interaction from your opponent. Worst case scenario, what you do is you build a physical deck through proxies, you test it out, then you build it and put it online, and then you start trialing against other people online. Once you've memorized, you've got that muscle memory in your head, you know exactly what you want to play and how you want to play it out, and then you build up your testing from that point on. Once you have done all of those stages, the next and final stage is to actually build the deck. This is where you're going to start looking on stuff like eBay, Card Market, you're going to go to trade environments like the trade group on Facebook. You might even have a friend that is into the game, that has got you into the game, that might have some of these cards lying around for you to pick up on the cheap where at all possible. Once you have built your deck, of course, I then advise you to go to your local environment. Now, you should have been looking around previously to this, to where your local environment is, because that's the one thing you also don't want to do, is you don't want to build your deck and then go, oh, okay, I really wanted the interaction with people, but there's no locals anywhere near me. Going to a local environment has so many different benefits, it's unreal. Not only will you meet new players there as well, make loads of friends, which is exactly what I've done. I've been playing the game for at least 8 years now, and I've made so many good friends from this. We have gone to Euros, we have gone to YCSs, we have travelled around, and it's been an absolutely amazing experience to be able to do. So that is the biggest highlight of going to a local environment and actually playing a card game like Yu-Gi-Oh! On top of that as well, when you go to a local environment, if they are an OTS store, and you'll be able to find this out just by simply asking that local environment, you will get very exclusive packs that are only available at local tournaments. Now I know you might be like, alright, well how does that help me? Quite simply, there are incredibly rare cards in some of these packs, so you could, just by entering a tournament, even if you get battered 5-0, pull a card that is worth £80. Now, there was a trade that I did with someone recently that literally went, here you go, I've got this £80 card, I'm looking for all these cards to upgrade my Trap Tricks deck. How can this be done? And very simply, he had pretty much put just money in to get 3 structure decks down, pulled 1 card from an entry pack, and then traded that entry pack up to upgrade his entire deck. So his deck straight away instantly went from a budget £50 card to an upgraded deck that can still compete and just competes a little bit better. And that's pretty much it. Once you've built it, once you go to your local environment, always ask people for help. Do not feel afraid to go, okay, do you mind having a look at my deck once I've done here? Some people might even say, hey, do you mind me looking at the deck? I know you're a new player here. I'll be more than happy to help you out. If you have any questions in regards to like the ban list, always ask the head judge or the person operating the event. They will usually point out the local person there that will be more than happy to look for your deck and say, yep, that card's banned, you might want to change it for something else. And they'll be more than happy to give you some tutorials and breakdowns to help you out and improve in the game. On top of that as well, there are loads of tutorials online in regards to specific decks. So if you're like, right, I really want to build this deck, go and have a look at other people's lists, have a look where they've played, and there'll also be combo videos, there'll be duel videos. You'll learn more and more with the deck as well. But I always advise physically testing it yourself, making sure you adapt the list to your own personal playstyle. I've said this many a times before, but do not net deck and expect that exact same deck to perform the exact same way at a different environment. Every player is different, every environment is different, and within reason, every deck and playstyle should be different as well. So you want to make sure that you don't confine yourself to only playing a specific deck a specific way. You want to make sure that you can adapt your playstyles as well. And that's where playing a deck that is not in the public eye also benefits you quite a lot, because a lot of people will not know how to play against it, and that will automatically give you a huge advantage when they don't know when to interact with you or the best place to stop you. You have no idea how many games you will win just for them activating a card at the wrong time because they did not know your deck inside and out. And that's what you should be able to do. You should know your deck inside and out, know exactly when to play a card, how to play a card, and go from there. Your local experience will be how you're able to learn from other people's decks, learn how the meta decks are being played as well, and you adapt to your local environment. If your local environment is all meta, then of course you want to be testing towards that. If your local environment is a lot of rogue and completely different decks that will change on a week by week basis, then again, you want to make sure you're learning that and making sure you know what to do when your opponent interacts with your deck and how you can get the best outcome from it as well. Now, I know this is a lot of information to take in. I've tried to keep it in those 5 separate segments so that you can watch one and go, right, okay, I understand that one, and then go back to the next one, watch that back and forth until you understand it, and then on to the next one. So overall, looking back at this, the 5 steps that you want to focus on is as follows. The deck basics, 40 to 60 cards, 15 card extra deck, 15 card side deck. You want to figure out your budget. Are you going to be aiming to get 3 structure decks, put them together, play with them, test them, and then go, right, okay, I'm going to upgrade this by adding this, and this. Alongside budget, near enough simultaneously or just before, you want to be figuring out your playstyle. Do you like to play control base, which is interacting more with your opponent's turn and moving through faster on your turn? Or do you want to play combo base, where it means you will take a couple of minutes during your turn, but you're able to learn and memorize being able to go from A all the way to Z in a very high stepped combo route? After you've done all of that, digital testing and of course physical testing if you want to get that far as well, and then moving on to physically building a deck, putting your money where your deck is, and then taking it to your local environment where you could hopefully get some awesome cards, make some amazing friends, and do incredibly well while you enjoy the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! Anyway, I hope this video has been informative as possible. Any questions at all, I am always more than happy to answer them in the comments down below. We also have Facebook and Instagram, so if you don't feel comfortable putting a public message on the YouTube channel, by all means, send it to us on Facebook, send it to us privately on Instagram, and again, I will be more than happy to answer them and help you out where at all I possibly can. But for now, as absolutely always, thank you so much for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, share, stay safe, and of course, happy dueling.